Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey folks, it's Matt Zachary, and welcome to Vax On, a weekly segment of my podcast Adaptations, right here on the Offscript Media Network.
Hey, I'm Elura Nanos. I'm a lawyer, a journalist, a mom of a teenage narcoleptic, and a professional big mouth.
Lou and I go back 30 years as best friends, and we're here to have fun and bring you a layperson's guide to what the hell just happened this week in healthcare as America gets its Vax on and shows COVID the door.
Matt gets me. He knows I'm tired, annoyed, and sometimes pushed to the brink by the intense chaos of our lives right now. We're here together to learn, complain, and include you in the conversation.
So join us on Twitter at VaxOnPod and share your stories and grievances using the hashtag VaxOn. Conspiracy theorists and haters shall be neutralized on sight.
All right, Matt, let's get at it. Welcome to Vax On, everyone. We're back. And when I say we, I mean me and not so much Matt. But good news, we have our resident redhead here.
It's me, Andrew MacDowell.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello, Elura.
I'm excited to sort of see you today. I can sort of see you on our Zoom link.
Yeah, my face is obscured by high-tech audio equipment.
And mine is obscured by bad lighting. So, hey, that'll work.
Yes, I'm fairly confident that I'm talking to Elura Nanos.
It's totally me. You can tell by my big mouth. So how are you doing? What's happening in your world?
Just back from vacation. We were in the Finger Lakes. It was a beautiful experience. Masking levels were fairly good. I think we felt safe. And there was lots of fresh air and sun.
Love that. That's so nice. And now you're back in time for back to school.
Yes. Not at all terrified by that.
No, not at all. It's totally fine when we have to do our school supply list and it's like backpacks and loose leaf and reinforcements and also like hazmat suits and masks and like hand sanitizer and Clorox and like all that stuff.
Yeah, I have to say that my kids anyway it's just second nature to them at this point.
Oh, sure.
You know, we adults have all kinds of paranoia that we're dragging around behind us. The kids just put their masks on.
It's so interesting. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was in a supermarket parking lot and I saw this mom and her little girl who was probably about 5. And the little girl was wearing a princess dress, as one does for food shopping. And she was wearing this like sparkly sequined mask. And I remembered back to when in the beginning of the pandemic, I was so bothered by seeing small kids in masks. I guess because I only associated masks with really sick kids in hospitals. So it just upset me to see it. Like it almost seemed like, the sign of the apocalypse that small kids were wearing masks. Watching this little girl just reminded me that, she couldn't have cared less. She was totally thrilled to have her sparkly mask. Right. She had no association with it the way I did. And like, it's fine. We adapted and it's totally fine now. And it was a good reminder that, that we bring a lot of baggage to things that maybe isn't always so accurate.
So true. So true.
So, yeah, so my kids, they'll go back to school with their mask. Luckily, my kids are now both totally vaccinated. So that gives me, a tremendous feeling of relief. Although I know it's not going to be a perfect environment, they're as protected as they could be. They have good habits. They have their vaccination. So it's kind of like, that's really all I could ask at this point.
Yeah. And I have plenty more to ask because my kids are not yet within the age range that is covered by a vaccine that's been approved for emergency use by the FDA.
And we're going to talk a little bit about those kid timelines later in the episode because it sounds like there's some good news coming. So we can talk about that, but not yet. You have to stick with us. Because first, we have to talk about horse dewormer.
Of course we do. It used to be that you expressed your political affiliation by getting a red hat, maybe, or maybe you put an elephant bumper sticker or a donkey bumper sticker on your car. Now we do it with medication.
Oh, it's so fucking ridiculous. I mean, if this isn't the most asinine thing I have ever heard in my life. So, let me just set the stage here for anyone who isn't surrounded by total crazy. And I have to just interject myself for a minute. When these stories happen, they actually take a few days to reach me because I live in this wonderful bubble of primarily educated, reasonable people. So I don't hear about the crazy conspiracy theories and ludicrous, medication alternatives, usually for a few days after it breaks. This one, honestly, it really hit me. It really got me. So there's this drug called ivermectin, which is primarily a deworming medication used for large animals like livestock and horses. But it is used sometimes in humans to combat certain parasitic diseases. And actually, it won the 2015 Nobel Prize for that. So it's not like this is the very first time it's been used in human, but it's a veterinary drug that's been around since the 1970s. And now your right-wing lunatics have decided, seemingly totally randomly, that we should use this to combat COVID. And not to treat for COVID, to actually prevent COVID.
Exactly. And it's a Nobel Prize winning medication. So I'm pretty sure that means that it can be used to treat anything.
Sure.
Do I have that right?
Is that the way it works? Once it wins a prize? and if that's how it works, does it have to be the Nobel Prize? Could it be something else? Could it be a Peabody Award? I don't know.
It's kind of like being an optometrist or a doctor of ophthalmology and then getting elected to the Senate and deciding that you are qualified to push ivermectin.
I just can't is kind of my feeling about this one. Mm-hmm. It's driving me crazy. And I cannot believe people are doing this. And people are really taking this shit. Mm-hmm. Prescriptions for ivermectin, which are normally $3,600 per week per the CDC, are now $88,000 per week.
What the fuck?
But here's what I want to know. I mean, prescriptions don't grow on trees. So these people who want this drug are going to their doctors and their doctors are writing them prescription for horse dewormer?
I suppose they are. We just keep on getting disappointed by our fellow humans. And regrettably, I guess that includes some doctors as well, doesn't it?
I guess so. But here's the thing that really gets me, right? So it's not as if someone sort of discovered ivermectin and then, just for whatever reason, anecdotally thought it might help prevent COVID. And now, because it seems to be working, everybody's jumping on the bandwagon. It actually doesn't seem to be working at all. Because there's actually been studies. There's been 14 studies with more than 1,600 participants. So granted, that's not millions of people, but you're talking about, 1,600 people who took ivermectin to see if it would prevent COVID. And guess what the study showed?
What did it show?
That it's totally ineffective for preventing COVID.
It does help people get diarrhea, though, from what I understand.
I mean, yeah.
And everyone needs help doing that.
Obviously. So I'm like, I don't even get it. This is not something to prevent COVID. The only studies that are out there that exist seem to show that it doesn't work, but people are doing it anyway. And the FDA, who I would like to think that doctors are paying attention to what the FDA says, the FDA weighed in and said, "You are not a horse." That's what they tweeted. Different than the lawyer who said, "I'm not a cat." So yeah, this is, you are not a horse. I saw a great tweet that said, like, if you're going to ask for ivermectin while you're at it, just see if you can put yourself down. But like, okay, here's the thing, right? So if you told me that there were a bunch of, vax rejectors out there who found that, I don't know, eating bee pollen or, making daffodil tea or whatever the fuck it is, that somehow was going to prevent COVID, I'd be like, sure, it's not going to hurt. Like, even if it doesn't necessarily work, if you think it does, like, great, knock yourself out. But one of the primary arguments against the COVID vaccine that I have heard is, I don't know what's in this, or it's not approved fully, or I don't think there's been enough clinical trials, or what are the long-term side effects, right? And those aren't nonsensical things to worry about. But it becomes nonsensical when you compare it to this. People are taking this. Do they know what's in ivermectin? Have there been long-term studies about this drug for this use? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Like, that's why you were worried about that vaccine, but this one's okay.
Yeah, and I think that what I really am struggling with is the fact that increasingly, I think we need to reach the conclusion that evidence and the consideration of evidence and the concept of ways of thinking that fit together and are coherent, and pointing out to someone that their ideas don't fit together, all of these habits that we have of talking to other people who've had a basic education and are accustomed to thinking through problems in a way that's functional need to be thrown out the window when it comes to any attempt we want to make at communicating with the type of person who is now taking ivermectin.
Yeah, it's kind of like, at some point we have to be on the page that everyone is entitled to their views, but your opinion is not equal to mine if yours is completely based in ignorance and mine is completely based in fact.
Precisely.
And this whole, like, my point of view is equal to your point of view, but your point of view is really just straight ignorance. Like, it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work in politics. It doesn't work in medicine. It doesn't work in law. It doesn't work. And I think that many of us have tried in our lives and through our education to learn to be accepting of people with different opinions. And there is a point at which you're doing the world a disservice by trying to act as if everyone is sort of equal in their opinion. Because if your opinion is based on total bullshit, I'm not interested in that opinion. That's just stupid. It's just wrong at some point.
Yeah. There's been so much effort recently put into the work of providing people who were in the past accustomed to getting shot down in discussions of this kind, giving them the tools to feel like they have a right to be there anyway. And that the move to make when you've been uncovered as a person whose ideas have no basis and no evidence is to pound the table and shout louder. Mm-hmm. We've recently said farewell to a president who did just that. And there's a direct line behind that man's behavior and the behavior that we're observing at school board meetings across the country right now.
Yeah. Do you know, did I tell you what was going on at our school board meeting in my district?
Let's hear it.
Oh, it's really upsetting. There's a guy running for school board whose daughter goes to school with my daughter. We don't know her, but she's about to enter that school. He's running for school board. His platform to run for the school board is unmask our kids. This is his whole platform, that kids should not wear masks. Which just bothers me. Like, it's such a ridiculous platform. Like, what the fuck does this guy think, that everybody enjoys wearing masks? Like, it's been proven to be a good way to stop the spread. Like, what? We're not doing it because we think it's fun. And this is his whole thing. And what he has done is he went to a school board meeting, refused to put a mask on. The district, to its, kind of detriment, was not really prepared to enforce its mask mandate. So they didn't really know what to do with him. And at the end of the day, it ended up stalling the meeting for like 45 minutes, completely interfered with school board business, which is, to me, it's just obnoxious. You're going to run to be on the school board, but you're not actually interested in facilitating the school board doing its important work. And then he came to an orientation at the middle school and sat high up in the bleachers away from other people solely to make a point about his refusing to be masked. And what he would do is he had a mask, but he wore it on his chin. And then every time someone came over to him to tell him to put the mask on, he pretended to be drinking because, that's one of the exceptions that you can pull it down when you're drinking a beverage. I mean, and the whole thing is like, listen, even if you think that the rules should be different, talk to the people about who are making the rules, but to simply just flout them, well, those are the rules in the book, it is just the height of irresponsible, bad citizenship. And this person is running for school board.
Yeah. And he believes that he's like Martin Luther King.
Oh, yeah. Oh, 100%.
He's really enjoying his position as a martyr.
Yeah. And you know what got me?
That's a deeply broken brain.
Deeply broken brain. I have to use that. And this is where my own sense of superiority is going to come in. I apologize to our listeners.
The concept of superiority needs to be restored, frankly.
Well,
not elitism.
Yeah, no, not elitism, because it has nothing to do with being elite. But here's the thing. I read all of the school board candidates' written platforms, and I couldn't help but notice that just one of them really had a problem with apostrophes and syntax and grammar. And guess whose it was? And I was like, I could read this guy's platform and tell he was a moron just from this.
Yes.
It's like, come on.
And it's not a good feeling to feel like you don't have what it takes to participate in high-level conversations that are important. That's a bad feeling. But unfortunately, there's no easy shortcut to suddenly becoming qualified.
Right.
You do have to do the work. You do have to learn how apostrophes work. You do have to learn how ideas fit together.
Yeah. Like we have schools out there. Figure it out.
Yeah.
I want to move to our second segment because one of the things that is bringing me some level of comfort in this world full of ignoramuses, it seems that the free market is coming in to basically not put up with people's bullshit anymore. And I love when that happens. In the same way that I love boycotts, I like boycotts that really work and they're for the right reason. I love to see private businesses just not tolerating bullshit anymore.
Right. And I suppose that what might save us is those instances where the bottom line meets this bullshit.
Yeah. And, I feel like this is not always the case, but there are definitely circumstances in which, the finances tell a story. Delta Airlines is like calling out anti-vaxxers. And I love it. Delta Airlines decided that they are going to charge their employees $200 a month if they won't get vaccinated against COVID-19. And I love it. And they're like, listen, it's not a penalty because, we hate you, but you're going to end up in the hospital and your hospital stay is going to cost us, they've estimated $40,000. So $200 a month is actually a relatively low price. They've stopped hiring anyone that's unvaccinated. And they're like, listen, this is what you're going to have to do. Sure, fine, it's your choice, but your choice is going to cost you $200 a month.
That's incredible.
It is. And, that's the kind of thing that I feel like it speaks directly to people who say, I don't need it. Okay, fine, you don't need it. But our financial records tell a different story because you're putting us at risk.
And so we need to refactor things and make a rational decision to charge you if you make certain decisions. One thing that I think is remarkable about this is that, of course, this is Delta Airlines,
and the Delta variant is
the second major company to have a softening of its brand quality thanks to this pandemic. The first, of course, being Corona beer.
Do you think that factored into Delta's decision in any way?
I wonder, but that they've had conversations about what to call this new thing in their press releases. And actually, I looked at a couple of the press releases and I noticed that they are basically alone among communicators in describing this as the B16172.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. I did not know that. But, I don't know if you and I talked about this, but when the Delta variant first came out, I actually thought it had to do with Delta Airlines. I didn't realize that it was like the Greek letter. So I thought it had to do with like something else. And then only then did I realize, oh, it's just Delta, like the letter. And I was like, I did not need to learn this much about the Greek alphabet in quite this way. But that is fantastic. Like what, you had to imagine the people at Delta Airlines when the Delta variant first started making headlines, they had to be like, oh, for God's sake.
Exactly.
That is so funny. And the same thing happened to me when I read about Lambda. So when I see Lambda, I always think of Lambda Legal, which is an LGBT legal advocacy group. And that's just because I work with them often. And so when I was like, what's happening with Lambda? And then I'm like, oh, it's a totally different Lambda. Oh my gosh, that is fabulous that they call it that.
Yeah, I don't know if they do that in every press release, but the two that I looked at, that's how they
That's fantastic. But I applaud these companies because I feel like they're taking a stand. It's a reasonable stand. It's directly related to what their damages are, from the company standpoint for dealing with their employees that have this. Not even to factor in the fact that it's a bad look for the company to have an employee come down with COVID-19 in the travel industry on an airplane. I mean, that's like a whole problem unto itself. There's already pilot shortages and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I think that those choices on behalf of large companies are really, really important.
I applaud this. Certainly within the it's not narrow enough, but the scope of approaches to getting past this point in this pandemic. Broadly speaking, though, I am incredibly happy that we are now taping after the FDA has announced full approval for the Pfizer vaccine. Yep. Hopefully Moderna follows soon. And it now makes it possible for institutions across the country to issue vaccine mandates.
Culture evolves at the speed of light, just like your financial needs. When it comes to your money, Credit Karma keeps you in the know and ahead of the game. You can count on Credit Karma to keep up with your financial needs as they evolve. We'll help you monitor your progress and give personalized recommendations so you can make strides towards your goals and find your way to money. Make sure you're on the right track, no matter where you are on your financial journey. Intuit Credit Karma. Karma you can count on.
So, Andrew, now it's time for our Sermoment of the week. Remember, here at Vax On, we have this incredible relationship with Sermo, a global social platform just for physicians. With Sermo's more than 1.3 million healthcare providers across 150 countries, Sermo provides physicians with a unique community that fosters discussions about issues that are important to them and their patients. And now you, our listeners, get to be part of the process. Each week, we're going to ask our Sermo physician community a series of questions, and we will report back to you with the doctor's answers. That's our Sermoment. It's like getting a second opinion, but with hundreds of doctors. So remember, listeners, if you have something you want to ask the Sermo community, let us know. Tweet us and let us know what you'd like us to ask the Sermo community.
And our Twitter feed is @VaxOnPod.
This brings us, by the way, to our Sermoment.
A Sermoment.
Yes. So we're talking about kind of what we would do and what we think should be done in terms of vaccine mandates. We've seen private industry do it. We're talking about municipalities that are doing it. And one of the things I wanted to know is, what does the medical industry think? What do doctors think about mandatory vaccinations? Because the medical community, theoretically, are the people who should be best informed as to both the risks of COVID and any risks of a vaccine or the efficacy of a vaccine. So I wanted to know what doctors think. So here are the answers, the questions and answers that we put to our enormous group of Sermo doctors. Our first question was just, do you believe that healthcare workers should be required to have a mandatory COVID vaccination? 49% said yes, mandatory vaccination for all healthcare workers. Everybody should get it. 22% said, yep, there should be a mandatory vax policy with some exemptions noted for pre-existing conditions. So that's, 49 plus 22 is, Andrew?
71%.
Yeah. So that's most doctors
Yes.
are saying, yeah, you got to have mandatory vaccinations. 4% said, yeah, you should have the mandatory vaccines, but only for people in high risk situations like frontline workers or home care workers. So that's another 4%, just, a limited vaccine mandate.
Right.
25% of doctors said, no, the healthcare workers are aware of the risks and they should be able to choose for themselves.
Right. Okay.
That seems high to me.
Keep
quarter,
me away from those doctors.
Yeah. I mean, that's a quarter of doctors.
Yes. Yeah. And this is an international cohort that Sermo works with.
Yeah. Second question was, how do you think that those who decline a mandatory vaccination should be handled? Like, what should happen to them? 33% said they should be suspended, not allowed to come to work until they're vaccinated.
These are doctors saying this.
These are doctors who say this. 17% of the doctors said anyone who refuses to get the vaccine should just be transferred to a low-risk environment, like working only in telehealth or something like that.
That's an interesting idea.
I thought so too. 2% said we should fine them.
Okay.
12% said they should be indefinitely required to wear masks. 16% said they should be tested weekly or even more frequently. And 20% said they should not be punished in any way.
So if I'm doing the math correctly, doctors were not allowed to select more than one of these options.
I think that's the way it worked, that they only could select one.
Right.
So it's what you have here is that a third of people said you got to be suspended, and it seems like a good amount of the rest essentially said you kind of got to do something to get these people away from the risky situation. Last question was, do you believe that certain healthcare workers should be allowed an exemption from the mandatory vaccination for medical reasons? And if so, which medical reasons? I thought that was interesting because we very rarely talk about what counts as a good enough reason to exempt yourself from a vaccine mandate. 17% said if you had a pre-existing autoimmune issue. 3%, very small, said if you're a woman of childbearing age. 7%, I was very interested in such a small percentage, if you have a history of blood clot disorders. So that's the one side effect that we have actually discussed. Only 7% of doctors said that that's a good enough reason to get out of a vaccine mandate. Right. 39% said if you have a prior allergy or anaphylaxis to other immunizations, that would be a good reason to exempt that patient from a mandatory vaccine. 11% if you're immunocompromised. And 24% said something else, some other rare disease or something. So yeah, so that's what doctors said about
if you prefer horse medication.
Right. We did not ask it. Do you think we should ask that next time? I mean, somebody's writing these fucking prescriptions.
Yes. If you'd rather take medications that are designed for other organisms, then maybe you should be exempted from taking the vaccine.
I wonder, maybe we should ask sometime about what the doctors feel that they've done, or have they ever written a prescription for someone because that person asked for a particular drug and they kind of felt like it's probably not going to help, but it also won't hurt.
Right. Yeah, I am fascinated by it. What is that dynamic? I recently read The Empire of Pain, a book that I strongly recommend. It's by Patrick Radden Keefe.
You were just telling me about it. It's on my list.
It's all about the history of Purdue Pharmaceuticals and the Sackler family, going all the way back to the creation of the company.
Those are some serious supervillains for anyone who doesn't know who the Sackler family are.
It really is remarkable. And it's an incredible story. Patrick Radden Keefe is a brilliant writer. He does extremely deep original research, and he weaves everything that he finds together into an astonishingly effective narrative that will leave you angry.
Yeah. And it's just, I don't know if you know, legally speaking, the Sackler family has been sued in many cases for essentially causing the opioid epidemic.
Yes. This book dives into all the ways in which that appears very much to be the case. It would take an entire further episode to talk about this book. But the reason I bring it up is that the factor that that I'm curious about when it comes to all these ivermectin prescriptions is the sales reps. Are the sales reps currently working this dynamic? Are they giving doctors information that leads them to feel more comfortable prescribing ivermectin?
Can we ask them that in our Sermoment poll?
I'd love to know. I'd love to know.
And if so, are they regular farmer reps or are they veterinary farmer reps? I need to know that as well.
Exactly.
Are they like, I can't. So Andrew, I promised you that we would end today's podcast with a segment about some good news for those of us with kids.
Oh boy. Let's hear it.
Really, nothing is more exciting than the fact that they're going to go back to school in a school building all day and I'm going to get some work done. That is great.
That is appealing. There's something better than that?
Yeah, they're going to actually be safe when they do it. It's going to be great. The director of Pfizer said kids' vaccines may be coming as early as November. So as of today's recording, kids 12 and up are eligible for the vaccine, and that's just the Pfizer vaccine. But Pfizer has announced that they're expecting that they're going to file the application with the FDA potentially as soon as October. And then after that, it could be as quickly as a month or so before the FDA gives approval for younger children. So the next group is going to be kids 5 to 12. And then the final group is kids 6 months to 5 years old.
Incredible.
It is. And we talked before about how frustrating it is to not really have any information that helps you predict when we're going to get these approvals. But I did find an important and helpful little nugget of information that I wanted to share. And one way of checking the FDA timeline for drug approval is by looking to see when the clinical trials close. And just to give you like a little background, so in January, on January 22nd, that's when the children 12 to 15, that's when those clinical trials closed. And then in early April, Pfizer applied for FDA approval, and then they got the approval 1 month later on May 10th. So it right now, the clinical trials for kids both six months to 5 and for the second group 5 to 11, those clinical trials are still open. But if you pay attention to when the clinical trial process ends and they're not accepting any more people into it, that is an indicator that the company is about to ask for approval. And they're saying that they expect it's going to be soon.
Oh, that's so exciting. We're prepping our kids. We told them that sometime in the fall, we hoped that they'd be able to get a shot. And of course, they aren't celebrating.
Were they afraid about the shot?
Nobody likes a shot, especially when they are young, short people. Yeah. But they understand the need for it.
I mean, I think that's really an incredible sort of sign of maturity that kids have unfortunately had to develop during this pandemic. My kids, especially my daughter who just turned 12, sort of lived in fear of shots. I mean, we had to just psych her up every year before the flu vaccine. It was such a problem. I would see that she would sort of shake on the way to the doctor's office to get the vaccine. It was so upsetting. Yeah. And she would deal with it, but it was like at the expense of a tremendous amount of stress. I remember that when my son was that age, he was once asked for a school project, like, what are the things you hate most in the world? And number 1 was shots. Number 2 was death. And I was like, really? But I mean, I think that the anxiety for kids, knowing that even though we're talking pain for like a second, it's very real, that anxiety. So my daughter, she got her first vaccine a few weeks ago. And she was nervous, but not super nervous. She was kind of managing it. When she went for the second vaccine, she wasn't nervous at all and came back and said, it didn't even hurt. And it was like her whole attitude had changed about it. And I really do think that that is less about her as an individual and more about the fact that the whole world is talking about vaccines. And even sort of through osmosis, kids are getting that message that it's important to do this and that we are lucky to have it. Because I don't think, we never talked about flu vaccines or anything really before. That it was just a bad part, just getting a shot. But I think kids are around the conversation of the value of vaccines. And even young kids, I think, are kind of getting that message a little.
Yeah. And getting the shots before this vaccine was available, it seemed like something that you were doing for no particular reason, no palpable reason, because of course they were working.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Why am I getting the chickenpox vaccine? Which blows my mind, of course, because I had chickenpox.
Oh my gosh. And it's just like the worst thing ever. So we all see that it's a lucky thing to have it. But of course, the kids have no idea what they're missing out on.
Exactly. Yeah. And I got the polio vaccine without ever seeing anybody have polio.
Right.
There's a reason for that. So it's interesting. I'm just hopeful that the ivermectin folks won't get to our kids.
Oh my God! Please don't give my kids any kind of horse tranquilizer or whatever. Yeah. And by the way, just wanted to just end with this. It's not just Pfizer. Even Moderna is predicting that they will ask for FDA approval for children by early 2022. So I think they were just a little bit behind Pfizer. But it's not like they've given up either. So I mean, that's great. It's things are moving along, and and that's just really reassuring to me to know that, soon we're going to be in a place where essentially everyone can get this vaccine.
It'll be a new moment when every human being above, I guess, the age of 6 months can actually get vaccinated. That will kind of change the dynamic. It'll change the meaning of the decision to get vaccinated or to not be vaccinated. And I think that'll have an interesting effect on the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it'll also put us in a place where schools that already mandate vaccines in many different kinds of vaccines will probably get to a place where the COVID vaccine is just kind of one more that they require. And it's not seen as so different, even though it's an entirely different context that it came about. It probably will just become one of the pack that you're expected to get.
And dear God, it just didn't have to be this way. We're all struggling. We're all suffering from the idiosyncrasies of a person who happened to get elected. It's so rough.
I think and I appreciate you pointing that out, Andrew, because there is so much that really is a long-term effect of 4 years, and actually more than that, because, there were a couple of years leading up to it, of empowering people to feel that their ignorance is somehow just as valid as someone else's informed opinion. And these are the effects of that. Certainly not one person caused the pandemic, and no one person can or could stop it. But this culture of, everyone is just going to make shit up by themselves and do what they want and fuck society and I don't care and don't tell me what to do and this is what liberty means. That is a very real effect of a culture that has been created and nurtured over the last few years. And it's perhaps the saddest result of having a leader that had his head up his ass and people who just love to be told that they are, valid and that their voice needs to be heard and all that kind of crap. But anyway, not to end on a dark moment, because let's end on the happy back to school September moment.
It is very, very good news.
It really is.
And those people that we're talking about right now will be footnotes in the history book.
Yeah. And for the love of God, everyone be patient with the teachers. Please. And please send your kids with masks, send your kids with the vaccines, because the last thing we need is for everyone to end up back in remote schooling, which will just torture these poor men and women who are there attempting to educate our kids in the face of probably the most difficult circumstances I could even imagine. So, be kind to them. Send them. I'll tell you, Andrew, I don't know if you do this, but I always show up the first or second day of school with bribes for my kids' teachers. Every time I bring them coffee, I bring them very good, high quality chocolate, some good hand cream. And I'm like, here you go. This is my offering. Please like my child. And remember that I'm watching. So now it's kind of like, I know this is going to be difficult, but we're really rooting for you.
That needs to be done on a grand scale. There should be a government program that suddenly lifts teachers up. Society as a whole needs to do that to teachers. They need to feel proud of their jobs again. I think that they do. It's just that there's so much unnecessary pain being applied to them.
Yeah, that goes from everything from please send in tissues so that your teacher has a box of tissues in the classroom.
Yes.
To, not paying perhaps what they're worth, or, expecting all kinds of nonsense from them on their off work hours, or whatever it might be. But go bring your teacher some Godiva chocolate or something. They certainly earned it last year, even if they haven't earned it yet this year. And you know that they will earn it this year. So good luck to all of our teachers who are listening. Good luck to all the families sending their kids into school, off to college, whatever it may be. Happy September, everybody.
and you teachers are the people who are going to prevent another cycle of this in the future, of people being proud of their ignorance.
Yes. So that's really important.
Doing the good work.
Yeah. You know what? That is such a good way to end. Teachers, you guys are on the front lines of combating ignorance. So that is primarily why we salute you more than any other thing. You are going to fix this because you're there to teach our kids some shit. I promise we'll try to support it at home, but you are the first line of defense against ignorance.
Thank you for your investment in the future, teachers. We love you.
On that note, have a great beginning to your September, everyone. Happy Labor Day, and we'll meet you back here on the next episode of Vax On. Andrew, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Elura.
Yay.
Talk to you
Bye,
soon.
everybody.
Bye-bye. That's all for today, folks. If you like today's show, the conversation continues on Twitter at VaxOnPod. That's VAXON Pod. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and tell all your friends to listen. Vax On is a product of Offscript Media. Our executive producers are Matthew Zachary and Elura Nanos. Our senior producers are Brianna Seeley and Andrew MacDowell. It is mixed and edited by Brianna Seeley. Our theme music is by Chair Model. For advertising and media inquiries, email media@offscript.com. Hit us up at contact@offscript.com to share comments, feedback, and make recommendations. For more information, visit offscript.com.